Welcome to the Primetime Training Podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Baher, and today on the show, we have Coach Tony Holler. Coach Tony is a high school track coach and has 40 years plus years of coaching experience in a number of different sports. He's a member of the Illinois Track and Field Hall of Fame and is the co-owner of the Track and Field Consortium. He's also a certified teacher of RPR, a writer for Free Lap USA and Simply Faster, and finally, is the creator and owner of Feed the Cats. Coach Holler, welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you for hopping on. I got loads of questions since I found you like 3 months ago. And so let's just hop right in. So your main thing that I've seen is like Feed the Cats training. So for those that don't know, like what is Feed the Cats and how did you come up with it?
Well, it began as simply a way to make track a better sport.
Mm-hmm.
I realized when I was about 40 that I'd been a head basketball coach, I'd been a football coach, I'd been a track coach, I'd actually won a couple state championships in track, so it wasn't like we were doing poorly, but it just seemed like it was a struggle to get the best athletes of the school to come out for my sport.
Yeah.
That track was just seen as lots of running and lots of hard work, and springtime in Illinois is a cold, windy, usually miserable time of the year, and we're just out there running around the track, and I really thought to myself, if I could get every good athlete out for my team, we would be really hard to beat. And so I changed the way it had traditionally been done, where instead of running laps, I said, we're never going to run a lap. And matter of fact, I told guys that could dunk a basketball, wide receivers in football, guys like that, I said, you're going to love track. And they look at me like, no, I won't, coach. I don't want to run track. And I said, no, we're not going to run. And they look at me like, we're not going to run? I go, no, we're not going to run. We're only going to sprint. And you can't sprint for more than 5 seconds. And then they like, is that really going to work, coach? I said, you watch, it's going to work. I didn't know if it would or not. But I knew that if we got the best athletes out, we were still going to be good, even if we were poorly trained. What I found out was that I kept track of the times. We timed and record ranked and published everything. And what I found was that everybody was getting faster. And even though the star athletes were the ones that made our program kind of famous, it was the average athletes that improved the most. And so I knew I was onto something. And so, 24 years later, here I am, and it's spread, it's proliferated to other sports. It's gone into mainly football, but I now consult with like 7 of the top 20 lacrosse schools in the nation at the NCAA level. I've consulted with England rugby. The New York Yankees fed the Cats in spring training. The Arizona Coyotes and the NHL feed the Cats. I've presented in England and Ireland, and I'm just a retired chemistry teacher that had some ideas about how to make the sport more fun. So it was never intentional to kind of get to this place where somebody from Tennessee, like yourself, some basketball player from Tennessee, has been watching my YouTube for 3 months and wants to talk for an hour.
Yeah, totally. I enjoy your channel a lot. But I have a question about Feed the Cats. It's like, so you're talking like 5 seconds for sprints. Is that typically what you use for like your track athletes, or is it like more based off like meters or yards? Like, what's the perfect distance?
I think it's more of a time than a distance.
Okay.
And that 5 seconds thing, one of the things I did when I was forming my ideas about how to really transform sprint training was it was about 25 years ago that there became these organizations that trained college football players for the combine. That they realized that running a fast 40 was worth millions of dollars. And so there became an industry that trained for speed. And when I was in Franklin, Tennessee, I hung out with a guy that worked at D1, and he and this guy was very open with the stuff he did. And he told me one thing I'll always remember. He said, anything more than 5 seconds is not working on speed. I'm like, we're not going to do anything more than 5 seconds then. Yeah. And so that so let's say we're doing a drill, like a choppy looking drill, like a high knees type of drill. We're not going to cover 40 yards in 5 seconds because we're not covering any ground. So it's more like 5 seconds, or what I tell my guys is we're going to go till we feel a little drop off, and then we're going to quit. So it's really different. Now you may say, well, what do you do in order to get your guys to run the 200 and the 400? You know, that's more than 5 seconds. But speed, when you get really good at speed, you become more efficient at speed, which means you burn less gas. It takes less energy to do the same. Like if me and you raced, let's say we tied in the race, that does not mean we use the same amount of energy. I may have used a lot more because I'm not efficient and you are. And so that building of efficiency happens when we sprint. And then what we do about 4 weeks before our first track meet is we start doing what we call lactate workouts, where, now we're going to start extending it. But even then, throughout the entire season, my 400 guys never run more than a 200 in practice, ever.
That's crazy.
And the most we ever did was 3 in one day. So, and we're good in the 4x4. We are last 2 years, I think we were 10th and 11th in the state in the 4x4, which is not what we want. We want to win the thing. We may win it next year. So this is not saying, like we surrender, we're not going to run the 400. But speed is the most important thing, because the 400 is a sprint. And then we just teach our energy systems to deal with the pain of running further.
Yeah. So you talked about like how you get more efficient at sprinting. Is that part of the reason that your like less athletic guys gain more? You talked about that in the beginning.
Yes. I think the less athletic guys gaining more is because they have never been exposed to speed. Mm-hmm. It's always been thought, I've always said that coaches come from a background of slowness, that most coaches were slow, and they were try hard guys, work hard guys. And that's why coaches love try hard, work hard players. That they don't really like gifted genetic freaks. They like people that are kind of like they are. So what I tell those coaches is, you better learn how to feed the cats. Even if you weren't one of them, you better learn. But what happens is these try hard, work hard guys are actually doing things that make them slower because they do too much work and not enough speed specific stuff. So even though these coach type people or these slower type athletes have worked their butts off to get faster, they actually got slower. And if they are ever exposed to correct speed training, where we train them to be more cat-like, more twitchy, more snappy, we train them doing less, but doing it better, they seem to really respond to that. And so I just think another thing about that is if you are slow, you have more room to improve. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I coached a guy that was as fast as anybody in the country a few years ago, and he only improved by maybe 1 or 2% because he was already the fastest. He was actually the fastest 14-year-old in the history of the world. So I mean, he was already kind of there. So even though he improved, he didn't improve a great deal. Whereas he had a teammate named Jalen Tillman, who's now a wide receiver at Bowling Green. And Jalen couldn't break 5 in the 40 as a freshman. And as a senior, he's running like 4.38. So
Wow.
massive improvements for a guy that came in slow, whereas a guy that came in on top of the world, you just hope you can keep him healthy and maybe get a little bit faster every year.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, some people are just built different to begin with. In regards to like something like basketball, if I'm doing a drill personally, would it be better to not, if I get gassed, to not do anything at all? Like just go 100% all the time, and then if I'm gassed, to lay off a bit?
It really depends there's a time to push through things.
Mm-hmm.
Just like when I say that about a month before our first meet, we are going to do some really hard stuff. We call them lactate workouts. And we're not going to feel very good when we're doing that. So there's a time when we have to build our capacity to do more work, to go further, to play longer, harder. But what happens is, let's say in basketball, that we just worship that base of hard work consistently throughout the year. So we never develop the ability to be more explosive, jump higher, run faster, because we're constantly chasing fatigue. And once again, it goes back to coaches who, that's where they live. They lived in a fatigued, I was watching ESPN today, and they're talking about how Jalen Hurts is the hardest working quarterback of all times, blah, blah, blah. And we hear that stuff. And so we think, man, we got to work 10 hours a day, or we'll never be Jalen Hurts as a quarterback. And what happens is when we start working 10 hours a day, we never get faster. We never jump higher. We never become more athletic. And people don't realize that Jalen was a very well-trained athlete by Bobby Stroop, same
Mm-hmm.
guy that trains Pat Mahomes. And through this training, he got really fast, and he became very, very athletic. So it really is smart work. So what I would suggest to a basketball player, and I was a basketball player, I was a college basketball player. My dad coached basketball for 47 years. When I was in high school, I would spend 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the afternoon in the gym by myself,
Mm-hmm.
me and a basketball, because that's what I was told. This is what it takes. This is what Pete Maravich did. This is what Larry Bird did, blah, blah, blah. So this is what I did. And then I would play in a league at night. And I was tired and my legs hurt in the league, and I wasn't very good playing. And so then I'd wake up the next day and do the same stuff over again and over again and over again. And looking back, did I get faster that summer? No.
Mm-hmm.
Did I jump higher that summer? No. Was I healthy? I was never healthy. My knees were always hurting. I never rested. I never recovered. I stayed up way too late at night, like teenagers do, because nobody ever told me that if I stay up late, that I wouldn't be as good of an athlete the next day. How crazy is that? I'm working 8 hours a day, but I'm staying up till 1:30 at night. I mean, like, it's just stupid. But yet that's what we did. And of course, I become a coach, and I did the same thing to my athletes when I was in my 20s as a head basketball coach. So what I would suggest is for sure in the off season to stop chasing fatigue and start chasing the things that matter, which is more athleticism, run faster, lift heavier, jump higher, jump farther, and bounce. Those are my apex predator stuff. That's my that's what a good athlete is. And what's missing among those things? Endurance. I don't say a word about endurance, especially in the off season, which is upside down because most coaches think that the off season's got to be just tons of volume and endurance work. So I've made the pyramid upside down. We're going to work on the things that matter in the off season. And then once we get into basketball season, we're probably going to have to practice 2 hours sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
We're probably going to have to really scrimmage hard, even through fatigue, because that's what we have to do. But because we're better athletes going into the season, we'll still be able to jump high and run fast and do the things that good basketball players do.
Yeah, I agree with that. I heard a quote by you. It was speed creates endurance, but endurance can never create speed. And so when I heard that, I was like, that's genius, because like I always heard, if you want to become slower, like run a marathon, if you want to jump higher, do some sprints. And so your work just made a lot of sense when I heard that.
That is, it gives me chills that you realize that yeah, you I don't know if you know this or not, what so many high school basketball coaches over the last 50 years, what they would encourage their basketball players to do, like high school basketball players to do in the fall, they'd run cross country. And that is like, I mean, if you are a really good distance athlete, run cross country. But if don't run cross country to get better in basketball, don't do that. My dad used to run us, like take us out and run us like 10 200s, 8 400s. It was like the way track athletes used to train back in the 70s, and a lot of them still do. And that's wrong too. What they should have been doing is doing bouncy, snappy type things, hardwiring those things, sprinting 40-yard dashes, timing people, finding out miles per hour at top speeds, all those things, testing vertical jump like every day. Test it, because when we test stuff, we're actually doing an exercise. And the more you try to jump high, the better you jump. Plus, when you're doing that, if you're not jumping high, you might say, well, how come I'm not jumping high today? Oh, maybe it was because I stayed up too late last night. Maybe it's because I played 4 hours of basketball yesterday and I'm dead. And then you start adjusting and saying, no, I refuse to be a lesser athlete. I refuse. I am going to be a great athlete first. And then I'm going to work on basketball skills. And then I'm going to let the season get me in shape to play in the long game.
Yeah. One thing I've always thought is like, we always have open gyms, right at the beginning of the season. And I think those should get you in shape rather than, I don't know, doing like a 16-1 after practice every time, just gassing yourself, because then your biomechanics get way worse and you don't want to do it. If you just play open gym, you want to play, you want to win. So you go hard every time.
I think you're on to something, Josh. One of the things I could read in your face that, that stuff is not fun.
No.
And we have a tendency not to be very good at things that aren't fun. Whereas if we really love something, like the game of basketball itself is something we love. I mean, it is great stuff. And so that pulls us. And I know this is weird. I'm being an old timer here, but like back in the 70s, the best basketball players did not play AAU. There's no such thing as AAU back in the 70s. They played on the courts. They played outdoor playground basketball, and we'd play 3-on-3, make it, take it. And you'd fight like heck, because if you lost, you may not play for a while. And if you won, your threesome got to stay on. Next up, let's go. And so it was competitive. It was like high level stuff. And it was not full court, because full court fatigues you. You can play 3-on-3 hard for a long time. We used to play for hours 3-on-3. You can't play for hours full court. So I totally agree that just by doing, like, if you can imagine those great players that were playing 3-on-3 for 2 hours, were they in terrible shape going into the season? They were in great shape. They were in amazing shape, because they were doing basketball-like stuff, high level stuff for a long time. And so they adapted just fine. They did not have to run cross country to get into shape.
No.
Play basketball.
Yeah, that's so great. I was actually crunching some numbers for basketball specifically. And so in a college game, there's about 70 possessions and the court's like 90 feet or 30 yards. So did some math, some tough math. And it was 2,100 yards for a whole game if you played the whole game. So
2,100 yards. So that's about
21 100s.
Yeah,
If you,
that's which would be about a mile and a half.
okay, yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah,
So
I'm just thinking in my head.
so for 5 seconds, like how far do you think you can get in 5 seconds?
Oh, you can easily go from baseline to baseline in 5 seconds.
5 seconds. Okay. So you would need to do, I guess, what, 70 sprints of baseline to baseline. But I was thinking like that's way too high of a number for me to
Way
do.
too high.
So what would be your, I don't know, what would you say is the perfect amount of sprint training in the off season when you're not doing as many open gyms? And how often do you do that?
This will, first of all, your math is interesting. I'll throw out this. Steph Curry, they did a study on him. He played 34 minutes a game last year, 34.5. And his total amount of running in a game was 2.7 miles.
Okay, yeah.
Per game. Now, I use that as a coaching. I remember this because I use this as a coaching lesson for people I talk to. If he runs 2.7 miles a game, should he try to reproduce that maybe 5 times a week in order to do? No. See, you're thinking you're a feed the cats thinker already. No. And the reason for that is because his jogging around on the court is not what makes him good.
No.
It's his CNS. It's his central nervous system that is elite. It's his quickness. It's his ability to take 2 or 3 really fast steps to beat somebody. It's not the jogging. And, of that 2.7 miles, hardly any of it's at top speed.
Yeah.
Hardly any of it. I mean, like less than 1% is at top speed, but it's the top speed that makes him good. We also say that about soccer. An average soccer player will run 9 miles in a game. About 5 of those miles are like walking and jogging. And less than 100 yards of those 9 miles is an actual sprint. But if you ask any soccer coach, what makes your best player the best player? They'll say fast, explosive. So don't train the 9 miles. Train the 100 yards. Train the fast, explosive. So then what you're asking for is, what should the dosage be?
Yes.
And I say what the dosage should be, even in season, that practice should never be more than 50 to 60% of game volume.
Okay.
Now that seems really low, and coaches will look at me like, no, well, you're right, because the legends of the basketball world, people like my dad, would tell his team that we're going to practice so hard the games are easy. But if we do that, we're going to be tired.
My dad says the same thing. Sorry.
Well, your dad's a smart guy.
Yeah.
But people like us have to teach that counterintuitive thing. The counterintuitive thing is if we are going to let the games be hard, because there's magic in a game. And guys that run real fast and jump real high and love the game are going to be just fine in the fourth quarter. Those guys that are not great in cross country can still dunk in the fourth quarter because they're good athletes. And so we want to preserve our athleticism, our love of the game, all that stuff through practice. Now, if somebody asked me for a conditioning program for basketball players in the fall, I would say, don't say the C word around me. I don't want to hear the C word. Conditioning, I don't want to hear it. And they're like, but coach, we have to get in shape. We have like 40-minute games at the college level, 32-minute games at the high school level. We have to get in shape. So let the season get you in shape. But we may not be in great shape in the first game. I go, who cares? Because the first game is not as important as the last game. And we might not be in as good of shape, which I hate that word, condition as our other team, as the team we play in the first game. But, we might be happier, more athletic, jump higher. We might have a 20-point lead at the half and the game's over.
Yeah.
And if it's not over, if it's close, gosh, I still put our money on us, because our guys are go-getters because we haven't run them into the ground all week. So that conditioning thing in the off season would be athletic training. That means sprint fast. I mean, I'm talking about sprinting like sprinters do, like spike up your basketball team, run 40s, run 10-yard flies, find their miles per hour, record, rank, and publish. Lift heavy, don't lift too much. It's not no pain, no gain. We're not power lifters. We're not bodybuilders. We want a stimulus in the weight room. So we might do 2 sets of 4 different lifts, all of them with perfect form, really intense, all that stuff. We're not chasing big numbers or anything. We just want to lift heavy weights perfectly. And then we want to jump high, jump far. We're going to do some jump training, but we can't be tired. Tired's the enemy, not the goal. Yeah. And then we want to do some bouncy things. And even like back in the 70s, we would be like bouncing back and forth over a balance beam. Like we did bouncy things. And so coaches knew. We did jump rope back in the day. That's a bouncy thing. So we want to do those things, but we're not trying to get tired. We don't care about conditioning. We don't even say the C word. We don't care about the word endurance. We want to make good athletes. So part 1, make good athletes. Part 2, play high level 3-on-3.
Okay.
Maybe once a week, go coast to coast. But that high level 3-on-3, where you're passing, catching, shooting, playing defense, you're not jogging up and down the court. I think that will get you into great first day shape in order to let the season build you up for the season.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. It's easy to follow too. It's not too complex. What would you say is the number one exercise to develop speed? Is it a sprint, obviously?
Yeah, I just can't get complicated here.
Yeah.
The number one is sprinting with spikes on in a straight line with the wind and getting timed.
With the wind. Okay.
I mean, like you want everything in your favor. Somebody asked me if I like overspeed training, and I said yes. So they said, do you like things that pull you? And I say, no, I don't. I know the 1080 sprint costs $20,000 and all the big time sprint coaches have one, but I wouldn't have it. I like wind. And one guy asked me if I wanted him to build me a wind tunnel. And I said, heck yes, that would be the absolute greatest thing in the world. We would be sprinting through a wind tunnel. We could have like speakers playing music real loud, or maybe the crowd cheering or something as we're sprinting with the wind behind us, not being pulled where our spine is lurching forward or something. But we're sprinting through a wind tunnel as fast as we possibly can, because we will hit speeds that we've never hit before.
Yeah.
Which causes the brain to take off its governor. The brain's job is to keep us from getting hurt. It's like a protective mother. And we want to slap our brain down, where we want to say, no, we want no limits on speed. And when we do that, our CNS becomes accustomed to high speeds, which allows us to take a step left or right faster, a step backwards, forwards, allows us to jump higher. The CNS, we say, is global, which means it controls all movement. And so if sprinting in a straight line with the wind, with spikes, getting time, is the best CNN exercise that there is in the world, the most extreme thing the human body can do is for you to run 22 miles an hour. Let's do that so that maybe we can run 23 miles an hour, and we'll jump higher, move better. We will be a different human. We'll be a different athlete. Now, there are some exercises and things, and the second tier of get faster things, I think all involve jumping and bouncing. And I like to combine the two, where we like jump high over an imaginary box and we bounce off the ground over another imaginary box. You can jump over hurdles, you can do all those things, but reactive jumping, where we are landing and jumping at the same time, which is basically the definition of plyometrics. So sprinting is the best thing, plyometrics is the second best, and everything else we do in a Feed the Cats program is third best. But there are some things that work against speed, which is like jogging.
Yeah.
Jogging and being tired works against speed.
So do you worry about your athletes getting injured with like overspeed training or the wind training?
That's a great question. And you've hit on something that is a huge problem. We're talking S&C people making over $500,000 a year at the best college football programs in the country. Are some of these guys are afraid to sprint because they're afraid they're going to lose their job if the star wide receiver pulls a hamstring. So they don't sprint. They run accelerations, 10, 20s. They run up ramps. They run up hills. They do things that are safe because they don't want to get injured. And then their team has a ton of injuries.
Yeah. Because
they're not exposed to sprint training. I don't know if you're a football fan, but TCU this year was picked 7th in their conference, and they played for the national championship. And at one of our consortiums, we had Kyle Bolton, who was kind of their speed guy. He's with the Rams now. Just got a job with the Rams. And I asked Kyle, I said, okay, so TCU in season trains speed 3 times a week. He said, yep. I said, why? And I thought I was being like a lawyer, like like never ask a question that you don't know the answer. I thought for sure he would say, because we want to be a faster team at the end of the season than the start. And he didn't say that. He said, number one reason, health. So just the opposite of what so many people think is like, oh, if we sprint, we're going to get hurt. We sprint not to get hurt. It will, vaccine's a dirty word these days, half the world, but it almost like inoculates us or vaccinates us from hamstring injuries and soft tissue injuries. My guys, because we sprint on day one, we sprint throughout the off season, tend to be much healthier than my teams were back in the 80s and 90s when we ran a lot. When we ran a lot, we got hurt a lot. When we run less but run fast, we are healthier. So I know it's counterintuitive. It's one of my favorite words, counterintuitive. You would think it'd be the other way, but it's really this way. But I just know it's true.
Yeah, it sounds like you recover more. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
I just read a great article by Derek Hansen about there's an alarming number of Achilles tendon ruptures in the NFL. There's been like 18 already this season, and the exhibition season really hadn't even started yet. 18, and he was going through all these different possible reasons. And one of my takeaways is that if you are slightly injured or overloaded work-wise, you have a much higher tendency to snap an Achilles tendon. And that makes total sense to me. So if my guys are coming in bouncy, they got sleep, they got yesterday felt like a fast but easy workout, and they like bounced out of the workout, everything's cool, they are much less likely to rupture a tendon, less likely to have an ACL injury, less likely to pull a hamstring. So a kid's health or an athlete's health is really, really important. And old school coaches didn't give a about health.
Yeah.
They would just say, this is the crap you got to go through. You just got to go through this crap. And once again, that's not a Feed the Cats coach.
So you mentioned the Achilles a little bit, but I just wanted to ask you, if you had to pick one body part like a bone, tendon, muscle, like the foot complex. One is the most important for sprinting. It's a big question.
It is a good question. For sprinting, the most underrated is the foot and ankle.
Mm-hmm.
Not many people would say that. But the foot and ankle has like guys that are really fast have really strong feet.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some elasticity. The Achilles is the biggest tendon in the body. It's like a big thick rubber band. There is a springiness, a bounce, and that's why I say training bounce is really important. That's really working on feet and ankles. I think one of the beautiful things about sprinting is that it is truly a concert of all the body parts. I think sometimes people, especially if they live in a weight room, see it as a muscular concert, and I would see it as a more electrical than muscular. And I would also throw in the fact that that elasticity that comes in the tendons and joints is really, really important too, because that elasticity is almost like free energy movement.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas guys that seem to run in a very muscular way seem to get tired fast and seem to be slow to me. Whereas like the winners of a race they look effortless. And I think that some of that efficiency comes from those tendons and the springy things that when we really stretch a muscle, it wants to bounce back.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reflexology that goes on. So when we move our hand way behind us, we stretch our shoulder, and our hand wants to come back. So and that's why sprinting in an energetic way when you're not tired really makes a lot of sense, because you're training those things. So yeah, I think I probably made that answer a lot more complicated than it needed to be, but the reason why sprinting is the greatest exercise in the world is kind of because everything matters.
Yeah. No, I loved your answer. I love talking about feet too. So if you want to go down that trail, that'd be awesome. But I agree. I think a lot of it has to do with like rotation, also. And that's a factor that not a lot of people are talking about too.
Yeah, that spinal engine.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't like I always say that sprinting is the best core exercise in the world, because our arms and legs are moving as fast as they can while our core remains stable, but it's not perfectly stable. Yeah. Inside of that core, there is a rotation and there's a bending back and forth. Like Usain Bolt, when he picks up his right leg, his right shoulder will come up some. And what they're doing, that the spine is moving. And so the spine is really important to sprinting as well. So I think it's truly a full body thing. Even the eyes. My business partner, Chris Corfus, says that that a young kid that has thick glasses that doesn't see well will always be the slowest kid in the class, because the brain is not going to put that kid in a dangerous situation of running fast. The brain will slow that kid down. And then a good friend as well, Dan Fichter, talks about how the brain or the eyes should be considered as part of the brain, since like 50% of the brain is dedicated to vision. So the ability to train the eyes as a sprinter and keep it on the horizon so that the brain feels safe enough to allow you to run really fast is, let's just say you're not very fast if you keep your eyes shut. You just won't be fast. And so those things are all really interesting.
Yeah, no, I was listening to Chris Corpus's like latest couple videos, and he talks about how a cheetah, how its face has it's like perfect for sprinting, how it has less fast twitch fibers than greyhounds, but they're actually faster because of its head and how it moves. And so it always stays in the horizon. So how do you like train that besides just telling your kids to like look at the horizon? Is that all it is?
Well, it's interesting. We do some things like we call them wickets or mini hurdles. We'll do like we'll go through like 8 of them, 6-inch hurdles, or we'll lay them down flat. It doesn't matter. The brain will still step over them like they're a hurdle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a real good thing because sprinters want to be front side. They want to get their foot and knee up in front of their body. So we always say get big in the front, and we're going to be short in the back. We don't want to be big in the back. We want to be short in the back. And so that's the main reason for doing wickets. And we do them at top speed. But what's really interesting is we train the vestibular system some by doing things like we will sprint eyes left, eyes right, eyes up. And by doing those things, we are making the brain, we are conditioning the brain to still be fast, to still send the correct signals to our lower body, even though we're not on the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about it, in almost every sport that's done on a court or on a field, basketball, football, lacrosse, your vision is seldom straight. Your vision is elsewhere, but you don't want your body to slow down. You still want your lower body to do what it's supposed to do. So we're really training the body to be fast without having eyes on the horizon. Now, having said that, we want to be more cheetah-like, and have those eyes, really focused if we're trying to win a race.
Yeah, it almost sounds like you're trying to become more comfortable with like harder movements so that when you come back and have your eyes, focus on the horizon, it's that much easier, right?
You're trying to get more comfortable at being uncomfortable.
Yes.
Another way of saying that is chaos. We want, like when we drive, we do not have a chaotic brain. We don't even think about driving. And if you do think about driving, you're not as good.
Yeah.
Like if you're like, doing like the 10-point check, like you got a driver's ed teacher in your front seat with you, you're going to be a basket case. But when we are like singing along with the radio and we're thinking about where we're going, can't wait to do this tonight or whatever, we are just perfect drivers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's kind of the way we want to be when we sprint as well. We want to make sprinting kind of like driving. It's like we have trained to sprint so often in the off season that sprinting is almost like second nature. It's a habit. But one of the things that we do is we want to create chaotic things that make our brain fight through it. Mm-hmm. So besides just eyes left, eyes, different things, we'll do things like hands high. We'll do things like hugs. We'll do things like pistols. We'll do airplane. We'll do raise the roof. We'll do all these different things, which create a chaotic, like the brain really has to work now to get through these things. It'd be kind of like, I guess, putting crazy goggles on when you're driving or something.
Yeah.
You really have to work to make sure we're not going to wreck the car. But we still want to drive. And so we do some of those things as well. And that's kind of the fun new wave. And the other thing about that is that people kind of do those things and then smile afterwards.
Yeah.
It's like kind of fun.
That's good. Yeah, it's easy to get training in that way.
Yeah.
What you were talking about kind of reminds me of like shooting a basketball. Like for me, if I get in my head and I'm thinking about every little aspect of my shot, like the timing's going to be way off. Like that's probably the biggest thing. But then I get out of in my head and start thinking about, every little thing, every little detail, my balance, and it's terrible. The less I think, the better.
It is exactly like shooting a basketball.
Yeah.
I always, and I say that the two biggest detriments to performance is trying too hard and thinking too much.
Mm-hmm.
But what are we taught to do?
Try hard.
Try hard. Gotta think. It is absolutely a fact that if you're at the free throw line and shoot it like you're driving a car, and you shot that free throw 1,000 times, you will make more of those than if you're trying hard and thinking a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you might shoot an air ball if you're trying hard and thinking a lot. And that happens, right?
Oh yeah, I do.
And so really we want to become unconsciously competent.
Great.
I love those.
Great.
Yeah. Unconsciously competent. And if you think about Steph Curry or just all the great ones, I mean, they just know what's going in.
Mm-hmm.
They just shoot the thing. Now, I do think that young kids, as a basketball coach, I used to say things like, give it a chance, like give it a chance, which meant get the ball up in the air.
Yeah.
Like young basketball player or bad shooters will shoot the ball at the rim. Kind of the opposite of Steph Curry. Mm-hmm. He does not shoot the ball at the rim. He shoots a rainbow, which makes the rim great big. And so if you just put the ball high enough into the air and give it a chance to go in, that's not thinking too much, I don't think. No. And so, for other kids, I try to give them one thing: high follow through, which once again puts it up in the air. And so you don't want to give kids too much to think about ever, because it will hurt their performance. But you're exactly right that shooting, and one of the things about shooting that Chris Korfis talks about all the time is that, Michael Jordan, the end of his shot always looked the same.
Yeah.
The end. But his footwork, whether he's fading or leaning or all those things would be different, but the end would be the same. And I think that's similar to sprinting too, is that no matter what we're doing up here, we want the lower body to be the same.
Yeah. Gotcha. What was that term you used? Unconscious competence? That's a great term.
Thank you.
I was thinking about that. I like to develop new skills, like handstands, juggling, stuff like that. And when I juggle, if I think about it, it all turns to trash, but if I just relax and kind of get into a weird zone, then everything moves smooth. So
let's see if I can quiz you on this. Yeah. What would be the opposite of unconscious competence?
Conscious lack of ability. I don't know.
Conscious incompetence.
Incompetence, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, there's 4 stages. I don't know if I can remember them or not. The 4 stages, like the very worst you can be is unconscious incompetence.
Yeah.
You don't know nothing and you suck at it. I mean, so the first stage is learning that you're incompetent, like conscious incompetence. Mm-hmm. And then you go to conscious competence, which is pretty good. That's mm-hmm. pretty good. You're good, but you have to think about it. But the peak, where we want to be, is unconscious competence. And I think that's where every pro is.
Yeah.
I don't think Mahomes is thinking a whole lot. Mm-mm. I think he's letting it rip. I think fast guys are letting it rip. I say that sprinters run with their lizard brain, which is unconscious competence. We're not thinking about it. We're just good at it.
Yeah. You just do.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it. Stop thinking about it. Just do it.
It's a great word right there. I kind of want to change gears here. So I noticed your shirt and I love your shirt.
Thank you.
It is. I need to get one of those.
I'll send you one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I need your address, but go ahead.
Oh yeah, no problem. If you want one of these, I'll send you one too. But how does the sun affect an athlete in regards to speed? Because I've heard a lot of times if there's higher elevation, I think, and then there's more sun, that athletes just run faster. Is that true?
I don't know about elevation, but I did a study 6 years ago on dopamine.
Mhm.
I heard a podcast, and it really intrigued me that dopamine is something that allows our arms and legs to move really fast. And dopamine also gives us reckless confidence. So I was thinking, I think sprinters need this dopamine thing. I need to learn more about dopamine. So what I learned, and I'm a former chemistry teacher, so I know a little. Anyway, the thing in the middle of my shirt is a dopamine molecule.
Yeah.
That's dopamine.
Mhm.
There's two ways of getting it. Well, there's more than two ways, but the main two ways: sleep and sunshine. You know, the article that I wrote talks about all of them. But in my study, I studied the fastest sprinters in the nation. And what I found out was that 90% of the fastest sprinters in the nation came from only 4 states: California, Texas, Georgia, Florida.
Shocker.
Sunshine.
Yeah.
Now, what they play, we're better coaches down there. No, you aren't. Florida is not better anything than Illinois. So no, it's not coaching. Some people say, well, training conditions. How come you're not great in the distance events? How come you're not great in the shot put and the discus? And I mean, Illinois is better in the field events than all those states. So it's not coaching, it's not training conditions. It is dopamine. So what can I do coaching in a cloudy state in the Chicago area? Well, I can sure tell our guys we need the moon. We need to sleep. We need that extra hour. I think championship sleep, 9 to 9.5 hours a night, is the hardest thing an athlete will ever do.
Yeah.
I mean, because you're a teenager, you're part vampire. It's really hard for a teenager. But if you can, you might be 10 to 20% better as an athlete.
Yeah.
It is that important. I mean, and then of course you'll be a better student as well. So sleep is something we can control. We can't control much with sunshine, but as you know, people live. I mean, we're both indoors right now.
Yeah.
People live indoor lives. I mean, my wife just left the house, but she got into her car in the garage and drove to a health club, and she'll walk about 30 steps to go indoors to work out in a health club. And then, so my point being is that we are not cognizant of living these indoor pampered lives where there's no wind, no rain, no sunshine. We need that. We really do need it. So in the spring, like if there's like a spring break and I hear one of my sprinters are going on a cruise, I'm like, that's the greatest thing you could ever do.
Yeah.
Marcellus actually did that his freshman year. I said, you're not going to be doing any really hard workouts, are you? He goes, no, coach, I'm going on a cruise. I said, be out in the sun as much as possible. And even though he didn't work out for 10 consecutive days, he came back and set school records and meet records in his first week.
Wow.
Sunshine is really, really important. There's a couple other things besides, this. Oh, and by the way, the sunshine, you need to get it on your chest and your torso. You also need it in your eyes. Early sunshine is better than late sunshine.
Yeah.
By the way, getting light into your eyeballs early in the morning and as much of it as possible during the day will also help you sleep better at night. So that it kind of fits together. That's how we grew into being humans. It's like evolution. People camped out their entire life. They lived outdoor lives and they slept about 10 hours a night. Yeah. And that's how cavemen lived. And now we're doing this experiment where we're, indoors all the time and we sleep 6 hours a night and we're all depressed and angry and all that kind of stuff. there are a few other things. Winning gives you a shot of dopamine.
Yeah.
And we don't get a chance to win games, win races very often. But when we do, that's really good. Score a touchdown, dopamine. But we can have some little wins. That's why I tell people every morning, drink 2 glasses of water. If you do that, that's a win. Every morning, make your bed.
Mm-hmm.
Find 3 or 4 positive things that you can check off and say, those are wins. I'm on a winning streak. You're on a winning streak before you've ever left the house. Every time we check off a box, accomplish a task, do something that we're a little bit proud of, there's a little hit of dopamine. And so those things make us feel better and want to do what we want to do.
That's why you like record, rank, and publish times, right?
Yeah. Amen. And it's not always, we're not always winning. I say that when people sprint for me, they either celebrate or swear. After when they hear their time, they're either excited or they're pissed. And I'm like, but that's okay. That's what athletes do.
Yeah.
Athletes are competitive. And, because we record, rank, and publish, I think what we do is not just running. What we're doing is performing, which is a central part of Feed the Cats. When I used to practice football or basketball or run track, practice was just the heck we had to go through to get to play in the games. It was hard, and it was meant to be hard. It was meant to be miserable. And yeah, there weren't many hits of dopamine going on.
Mm-hmm.
But the way I run practice is we get to see progress. We get to have some wins. And I think overall it creates better athletes.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. You mentioned you work with Chris Corfus, right? The track field consortium, or how do you say it?
You can say either way. We say consortium.
Yeah. But he's involved with RPR, right? So you use that for your track athletes, right? How has that affected the injury rates of your guys, and how has it affected like warm-ups, stuff like that?
RPR, Chris brought something called Be Activated from Cape Town, South Africa, a guy named Douglas Heel. Literally brought Douglas to the United States for like 9 days at a time, and Douglas would do 2 weekend workshops. And eventually about 10 years ago, they invited me, and I didn't have to pay the $500 because I was going to write about it. And so I've written a ton. I think I've written maybe 12 articles about RPR. RPR is the next generation of Be Activated. And Chris is Douglas Heel is amazing. But Chris is the best RPR guy in our country. I mean, he is number one. And so what RPR, really 3 big things. One thing it does is for the brain. I always thought that coaches wanted to create an adrenaline state with their athletes before games, until I learned from Douglas Heel that adrenaline is fight or flight. And I said, isn't that good? And he goes, no, because the third F. Okay, stop giving me riddles. What's the third F? Fight, flight, or freeze. I'm like, oh God.
Yeah.
Now I understand. He said, yeah, if you see a tiger that is going to eat you, you may think you're in a performance state, but you collapse. You are already thinking you're going to get eaten, and you're trying to protect your internal organs. You're shaking. Yeah, you might be able to run fast for 20 seconds until he catches you, So here I thought as a coach's kid that was what we wanted, and it's not. Mm-hmm. We want the parasympathetic state. We want to be like Usain Bolt, almost like in a clown around mood. We want to be zen, relaxed before a football game. We don't want to be banging our heads against lockers. We want to be breathing heavily. We want to be expanded, all those things. So anyway, RPR does that. And then RPR allows our body to work efficiently like it's supposed to work. I mean, we have muscles that are supposed to be doing certain jobs, and sometimes they just aren't doing it. Mm-hmm. And if there was a way to get every muscle to work in symphony. We talked about that with sprinting.
Yeah.
We will sprint faster. It will improve our performance. And then the third thing is injury. If everything is working the way it's supposed to work, we're relaxed, we're loose, we feel light. Everybody that goes through RPR says, I feel light, like light on my feet. Well, that's good. All those things will contribute to fewer injuries. Football teams that do RPR report an amazing reduction in concussions. There's Cal Dietz works with Minnesota hockey, University of Minnesota, and he had some stat like 1,700 player hours without a soft tissue injury because of RPR. I mean, no, like groin, no, like hamstring, no calf stuff. Obviously, you can still break a leg. RPR is not going to do anything at all if you get hit by a car. But those soft tissue injuries that plague so many athletes can pretty much disappear. And RPR is kind of voodoo. It's not a lot of science behind it, but at its core is belly breathing. And breathing changes us. And so there's no voodoo involved with breathing. Breathing is, I say that there's religions that are based on breathing and meditation and changing the way we think through breathing. So it's belly breathing and then pressure points that tend to correspond to different muscles of the body.
Yeah, no, I've watched a couple of his videos and tried some, and I just feel like it's easier to get warm when I do it. And I feel a little bit more relaxed and just in tune with my body. So
as a basketball player, I tweeted this out last year. University of Wisconsin's basketball team, before a game, standing in a circle, and in the middle is, I don't know, S&C guy or something, or coach, I don't know. And they were all doing the rib spots and the psoas and the glute spots and all that stuff. And as a team, they were doing what my track team does before a Big Ten basketball game. And I guarantee you one thing, there's no downside.
No, there isn't.
There's no downside. It's not like you're going to screw anybody up.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, if a guy's going through the motions saying, oh, this doesn't work, this is stupid, he's not going to get any gains. But if people believe in it and they're pushing hard and they're into it, they will see improvement.
Yeah, I agree. What makes a good foot when sprinting? Like, do you tell your athletes to get on more the forefoot, the ball of the foot, or are you worried about the toes in some way? Or do you not worry about it that much?
I wish I had a better answer for you. Chris Corfist, if you did a session with him, he could talk a lot about this. But I don't know if he'd cue it. I don't know if he would tell an athlete. I do say when I hear somebody say, run on your toes, I'm like, no. You don't run on your toes. Your foot lands pretty much on your tripod, which is your heel and 2 points in the front, and so and a little more at the heel, it will roll towards the outer tripod and then towards the inner tripod, and you come off your big toe.
Yeah.
And there are some things that we do where we work at coming off of the big toe. But this stuff is organic. I mean, like every fast guy does that.
Yeah.
I mean, every fast guy does that. So just because it happens doesn't mean you cue it. I tell the story that I wrote an article about vertical force. That at top speed, you're putting like 5 body weights into the ground in 1/12 of a second. And something you can't do that in the weight room. 5 body weights. Like if you weigh 200 pounds, you're putting 1,000 pounds into the ground. And if you're an elite sprinter, it's in 1/12 of a second. And so it's an amazing thing. And it's down into the ground. You're not pushing back when you're at top speed. Well, so I wrote an article and it's pretty good. And so I started telling my guys, punch the track. vertical force, hit the track hard. And they all started looking stupid, like, so just because you do it doesn't mean you teach it and tell people to do it. You just know it happens. Like,
Gotcha.
Like if you're big in the front, if your knees up, your foot's out in front of the body, you're going to strike down. If you're running really fast, you're going to strike down. If you strike down, then you're going to bounce off the ground. You're not going to be on the ground much. So it's kind of like one of those things where if you do all the things you do when you're sprinting fast, your feet are probably going to be good. Your vertical force is going to be good.
Yeah. It's kind of like a byproduct of everything.
I think so. I think so. Like if you can imagine your coach, like speaking into your ears every second of a basketball game.
Yeah.
It would not be good. It violates that unconscious competence thing that we're wanting to create with athletes.
Yeah, I agree. I just have a couple more questions, probably like 4 or 5, and then we'll wrap things up. But you mentioned breathing. How do you cue your run? Do you cue your runners when they sprint for breathing?
No, I really don't. Like some of my runners will cue each other, like stop holding your breath,
Okay.
And I want to tell them that you could actually hold your breath. You don't really need oxygen. It's totally anaerobic when you sprint. But I think that breathing relaxes you and gives you a bigger range of motion and stuff. So, good sprinters are not veins popping, trying hard. They look effortless. So no, I don't really cue them. But I think it happens organically.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious because, I've been trained by someone who they cue like every third step, you breathe out. And so I don't know. I just wanted your thoughts on it.
I'm not saying they're wrong. It's just that I haven't done that. And it's very possible that guys, I don't know, the guys that are really fast kind of do that. I just, wonder about, I just, it doesn't seem like that cue is going to make much of a difference, but
Gotcha.
I might be wrong.
No, yeah, it didn't really affect me that much. It just made me think of something else. So now I got 3 questions to kind of wrap up. They're kind of different than like the track and field athletic questions, but what's one book that's kind of influenced your life and kind of maybe changed the way you coach or how you live your life just every day?
I'll throw 3 of them out there. I read a lot. Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F is, and it's interesting. I read that book because I forgot the guy's name, but an old, like 70-year-old assistant of Steve Kerr said it is his favorite book. So I'm like, I got to read it, So I love Mark Manson. And then essentialism. A lot of people say it changed their life. It did not change mine. It reaffirmed and confirmed my life.
Gotcha.
Feed the Cats is essentialist. It's like the disciplined pursuit of less. Do less, achieve more. Get further by doing the right things, not more things. So essentialism, I think, is really, really important. And then I think on kind of a spiritual level, the book Groundedness by Brad Stolberg was just brilliant. He brought in all kinds of things from Christianity to Eastern mystics to, all these things, basically bringing up things that we really need to hear, things about community, like we are not attached enough in the modern world. And we need to be attached. We need to feel that connection with other people. And I think athletes have it. I think that's why we love being on a team and stuff. But so many people don't. And Anyway, that groundedness was just I thought it was the most recent kind of life-changing book that I read.
Well, thank you. I'm a big reader as well. We just went thrift shopping, so I got a bunch of books.
I can tell you're a reader. I can tell.
Yeah.
That's quite a compliment.
Thank you. Thank you. So you mentioned like Chris Korfist, Cal Dietz. Who are some other coaches, for me to check out and learn from?
Whew. I've been so lucky. Brian Kula is a very, very good friend. And he's coached McCaffrey since he was 12. And he's a guy you got to get on. You absolutely have to talk to Kula.
Okay.
I can make that happen.
Thank you.
But you have to talk to Kula because you would really hit it off with him. But he's really, really good. And Korfist, I'd already won 3 state championships and I was in my 50s before I met this guy, and he's the most brilliant guy, I've ever met. I learned a lot from my sons, all 4 of my kids actually, but my son Troy runs my, he's got my Instagram up to 40,000 followers now. And I don't even have my password, like I run my Twitter, he runs my YouTube, my Insta, and my TikTok. And now he's doing that for Korfist too. And then I've learned so much from my sons, Alec and Quinn, who are both really good coaches. Outside of that, I mean, I've just gotten a chance to be friends with so many people. Dr. Ken Clark, great sprint coach, Jonas Dodu, Steve Jones. Have you read The Twin Thieves yet?
No, I have not.
Read The Twin Thieves by Steve Jones. Steve Jones is the best public speaker I've ever heard in my life. And, in my last 10 years, I'm kind of friends with some really important people. And so, yeah, there's so much of it out there. It's exciting.
Really cool. Thank you so much. Got new names to learn from. And the last question, where can people find you online? I know you just mentioned like YouTube, Instagram.
Yeah, my Twitter kind of changed my life because I was able to like write blogs and things and put out on Twitter and people could read it. Now you can put out videos, put out video this morning of a guy bouncing, and people can see it. I can put out stuff that people want to argue with, whatever. But Twitter is my main thing, is at PN Track, or just look up Tony Holler. And then, like I said, Insta, TikTok, I think it's Coach Tony Holler. And my YouTube stuff's really big. And this stuff, when you send me the recordings, I'll put it on my YouTube channel too. And like small segments and stuff. So you'll be famous pretty soon. No. And then people can reach out. You can DM me. You can tony.holler@yahoo.com. You can email me. I've been answering emails since the beginning of emails about 25 years ago, which kind of got me started down this road where people would ask me questions and I'd answer it. And I got better at answering them. And I thought about things. And, you do stuff like that for 25 years and you get better, better and better at answering the questions and saying, what you think.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the time that you've given me today. I've learned a lot already. But yeah, thank you for coming on the show.
Cool. When you send me these recordings, you also have to send me your address and I'll send you one of these shirts. You want black? You want black?
Black's perfect.
XL or L?
XL, please.
XL. Gotcha. Sounds good, man. Good luck you're going to Bryan
College. Yes.
And you're going to play basketball there.
Yes, sir.
Good luck to you.
Thank you. All right.
Take care.
You too.